Meantime, the Department of Homeland Security also been a very busy morning. They held a press conference just a short time ago, and we heard from Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino. DHS saying that in the past year, they have arrested more than 10,000 immigrants who are living in Minnesota illegally. They say roughly 3,000 of those arrests have come since the launch of Operation Metro Surge. And if you remember, that began on November 29th. So this morning's press conference highlighting those arrests, but also discussing the issues that federal agents are facing when it comes to encounters with protests. So we have a short clip here that we wanted to play for you, and then our Corin Hoggard is actually following this story today, so we'll talk to him on the tail end of this. But Greg Bovino basically saying that is preventing these agents from being able to do their job. Let's listen.
Violent mobs, rioters, who became violent towards the end of the day. Our very last stop at a gas station was met with violence. Individuals that perpetrated violence against our Border Patrol agents, forcing us to take action, not against Victor Urice, the individual that we were after, but to take action against those violent anarchists who didn't want us to catch Victor Urice. If you can believe that. Absolutely unbelievable. Hey, where were the cops during that 8 hours of stalking and violence? Where was Mayor Fry? Where was, I don't know, Governor Waltz? I didn't see him around anywhere.
It's important to know that there's a cost for everything, and the cost of Minnesota's sanctuary policies is steep. ICE is in the Twin Cities to remove criminal illegal aliens who have been released from jails and prisons despite the risks they pose to the public. The people we've arrested are here are not people you want living next door to your families, your children, your parents, or your best friends.
All right, so our Corin Hoggard was there this morning, and he's covering this story for us today. So, Corin, tell us what else Greg Bovino had to say this morning.
That soundbite you used from him there was him discussing the incident that was in East Isles neighborhood in Minneapolis, and you've seen it. I think you guys have
the
played
Speedway video. Is that right? People have seen it online, or is that different?
The Speedway, I think, is part of the day that Bovino had as he went out with the ICE folks. But the green gas that was sent at some of the observers and or protesters out there was not at the Speedway. It was in the East Isles neighborhood, maybe not far from the Speedway, I'm not sure. But we, have video of Greg Bovino himself getting out and throwing this green gas into a park where some of the crowd was at one point. And so he is defending their use of these munitions. He said, related to that, we follow the law when we utilize less lethal munitions or any use of force. It's called the minimum use of force necessary to either effect an arrest or to accomplish a mission. So we did that. A lot of the folks out there would disagree, saying that they were not impeding, they were just observing and complaining, and that these were chemicals that were thrown at them kind of haphazardly. What I'm looking at today is just kind of the tug of war between this operation and the courts and the law. So, as you know, in the Tincher case last week, we had a judge rule that they could not use these types of forces and these chemical, pepper spray, etc., on peaceful observers, anyone who wasn't breaking the law. But yesterday, as I'm sure you know, a judge put that ruling on hold, at least for the time being, and Greg Bovino, the Border Patrol chief, insists that everything they did was within that court ruling, and so we're kind of looking at that. But we're also looking at them. The AP yesterday got this memo internal from ICE from May that said they are allowed to break into a home to make an arrest without a judicial warrant, with only an administrative warrant. So just for those who don't know, an administrative warrant is an ICE supervisor checking the work of an ICE agent and saying, yes, go ahead and make this arrest. A judicial warrant requires an extra layer of review by a judge. A judge has to sign off on a judicial arrest warrant. And so we're talking to constitutional scholars on this, and 100% of them say that is a Fourth Amendment violation. It's a clear one. And if ICE insists that this May memo that says that they can, go into homes based on administrative warrants and not judicial warrants, which we've seen here. In Garrison Gibson's case, the Liberian man, they broke down his door, arrested him. A judge told them that was a Fourth Amendment violation, forced them to release Mr. Gibson. We saw them go into Chung Lee Tao's home in St. Paul over the weekend and take him out, even though he is an American citizen. We saw them bring him out in his shorts. They broke down the door, apparently without a judicial warrant, and that was days after the ruling in the Gibson case. And so it seems, I didn't get the chance to ask. I tried to ask questions. I did not get a chance to ask questions. But it seems like ICE is still operating under that memo from May. And Marcos Charles there, who is their associate director for ICE, says that first off, we don't break into anybody's homes. We make entry in either a hot pursuit with a criminal arrest warrant or an administrative arrest warrant. So that would confirm that they are following the internal memo from May and not the court ruling that came down here from a federal judge in Minneapolis last week.
Corin, this is it's so complicated, and things are changing. It seems like there's law, then there's also policy, and sometimes there's changes to the policy, and sometimes the law it changes, or there are alterations there, and then sometimes there's interpretation of the law, and so it's really hard, I think, for people. I know it was just maybe a week ago or so where people like you and me were talking to immigration attorneys who said, you don't have to answer the door unless there's that judicial warrant, and that was kind of the guidance. And so I think it's hard for people to keep up with where we're at with what is needed and what is not. So, but your story today is trying to kind of dig into some of that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Okay.
And I have already on the phone talked to a couple of constitutional scholars. One of them told me basically that this ICE memo goes against all of the judicial rulings, basically going back decades, if not centuries, in the United States. Even the Supreme Court, they're unequivocal. You cannot enter a home without a judicial warrant.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get some. I'm glad we can slow it down a little bit, and you can look into it here, and we can hopefully get folks some clarity on that. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you a little bit later. Thanks, Corin.